A live stream that was meant to be harmless entertainment became one of the most shocking digital detonations the modern entertainment world had ever witnessed. Within minutes, a single slip from Fan Shiqi ignited a crisis so vast, so unnervingly precise, that it forced millions to question whether the tragedy surrounding Yu Menglong was ever an accident at all. The moment felt less like a celebrity answering casual fan comments and more like a fault line cracking open beneath an industry that had spent years burying its darkest secrets. The startling truth was simple. One careless confession had the power to unravel an entire system. But behind the glamour and the excuses, what mechanisms are really driving this crisis? We will analyze every detail, from the initial mistakes to the irreversible damage, to see how the entertainment world works and how an icon is redefined. The night began innocently, framed by bright ring lights and the upbeat tone of a host who had done this 1,000 times before. Fan Shiqi greeted his viewers with warmth, his smile steady, his movements relaxed. Thousands poured into the live room, filling the chat with playful emojis and excited questions. It felt like the beginning of any ordinary broadcast. Yet even in those opening seconds, something in his expression seemed quietly misaligned, as if he were carrying a weight that had been pressing on him for far too long. The shift came slowly at first. Viewers began asking about Yu Menglong, the beloved actor whose disappearance and mysterious incident had lingered like a shadow over the entertainment industry. Fan Shiqi tried to dodge the questions with practiced ease, answering unrelated comments, lifting his drink with a rehearsed laugh, pretending that the avalanche forming in the chat was nothing more than noise he could politely ignore. But the audience refused to let go. They asked why the silence had lasted so long, why every friend had stopped speaking, and why the leaked video of Yu Menglong trembling alone in a dim room had never been explained. And then someone asked the question that changed everything. Tell us the truth. Who was with Yu Menglong that night? The air shifted. Fan Shiqi froze, the smile still present but hollowed out, stretched thin over something raw and trembling beneath the surface. His jaw tensed. His fingers shook. His eyes darted off screen, as if searching for permission or facing a threat only he could see. For a heartbeat, it seemed he might recover, push the moment aside, and return to the script he had been clinging to. Instead, he let out a quiet exhale, looked directly into the camera, and whispered words that would ricochet across every corner of the internet. It was never supposed to go that far. He did not mean to. The world exploded. Comment sections erupted in disbelief and panic. Viewers typed so quickly that the chat became a storm of overlapping theories and demands. Shock rippled through social media, replaying the moment in looping slow motion, isolating every flicker of fear in Fan Shiqi's eyes. But this was only the beginning. To understand how a single crack could split open an entire industry, we need to go back to the root of the pressure, the hidden truths, and the silent forces that shaped this night of confession. The moment Fan Shiqi whispered those fateful words, a deeper question emerged beneath the shock. What kind of pressure, threat, or truth could push a public figure to fracture so obviously on camera? The live stream did not exist in isolation. It was the breaking point of something far older, heavier, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. To understand the weight on his shoulders, we must return to the beginning of that night, when the atmosphere seemed light, harmless, even deceptively normal. From the start, there was an undercurrent in Fan Shiqi's demeanor that contradicted his cheerful greetings. His smile carried strain, the edges too tight, the humor slightly delayed, as though his mind was not in the room with his viewers. He lifted his drink with deliberate casualness, but his fingers lingered on the cup in a way that felt more like grounding himself than enjoying the moment. The ring lights around him cast a bright glow, but the brightness only made the shadows beneath his eyes more pronounced. It was the look of someone who had rehearsed calmness many times before stepping into the public eye. The questions about Yu Menglong shifted everything. Fans were relentless, not out of malice, but out of fear and confusion. The leaked video of Yu Menglong trembling in a dim room still circulated online, raising more questions than answers. In the video, Yu Menglong seemed terrified, pleading for something to stop, though no one could hear the person he addressed. Official statements had been vague and evasive, and every friend, colleague, and staff member had fallen into a synchronized silence. The absence of clarity had created a vacuum, and the audience needed to fill it. When Fan Shiqi tried to dodge the topic, the viewers immediately sensed it. He changed subjects too quickly, scrolled past certain comments too fast, and laughed at moments that did not call for laughter. His avoidance was not subtle. It was panicked. The more he pretended not to see the questions, the more the crowd insisted that he answer them. They asked why Yu Menglong vanished, why the timeline did not match official explanations, and why the stories surrounding that night were filled with contradictions. Then came the question that broke him. Who was with Yu Menglong that night? A subtle paralysis washed over him. His shoulders stiffened. His breath hitched. His pupils contracted as though he had witnessed something approaching from the corner of his screen. That was the second the mask slipped. Weeks of fear, guilt, and suppressed truth appeared in his expression, all within a heartbeat. The soft tremor in his hand was unmistakable, the quiet swallow a clear sign of internal conflict. He looked like someone who had been warned repeatedly to never cross a certain line. The instinctive response, he muttered, was not a planned confession. It was a crack formed under unbearable pressure. It was never supposed to go that far. He did not mean to. That single sentence revealed the existence of another person, an action, and a moment that escalated beyond control. It implied intention, regret, and consequence. It suggested that Yu Menglong's tragedy was not a solitary event, and certainly not an accident. It hinted at confrontation, perhaps violence, and most disturbingly, a breach of trust. Because the next thing he said, barely audible, reshaped everything. Someone close to him, someone who was supposed to protect him. A manager fits that description perfectly. A person paid to guide, safeguard, and elevate a performer's career. A person with access, authority, and influence over every minute of a celebrity's life. The concept of such a figure becoming a threat is not unprecedented in the industry, but rarely does it slip out through the trembling lips of a colleague on a public platform. This was not a sudden mistake. It was the consequence of internal turmoil that had been rotting beneath the surface for far too long. Fan Shiqi did not want to confess. He fought against it, pushed it down, hid behind smiles and jokes. Yet the truth pressed against him with such force that even the polished facade of a trained performer could not contain it. The gokri of this scandal is not simply what happened to Yu Menglong. It is the web of silence, fear, and coercion surrounding the event. It is the atmosphere of pressure so intense that even witnessing the aftermath appears to have left Fan Shiqi psychologically paralyzed. What do you think about this? Comment amen below so we can continue with the unfinished stories. Because the moment those words escaped his lips, the digital storm was inevitable. And the world had only heard the beginning. The ripples of Fan Shiqi's confession became a tidal wave before anyone could comprehend what had happened. Within seconds, screen recordings of the live stream multiplied across every platform. Every frame, every flicker of fear on his face, every tremble in his voice was replayed, enhanced, analyzed, slowed, and reinterpreted until the moment no longer felt like a slip, but a coded message delivered under duress. The internet, once curious, became relentless. It was no longer a conversation. It was an investigation. What began as fragmented clips quickly evolved into a complex archive maintained by thousands of users working in unintentional synchrony. Amateur audio engineers dissected the whisper. Video editors enhanced the shadows around his lips to prove he had indeed said, "Someone close." Data analysts compared timetables of the leaked dim room recording, overlaying them with known appearances of Yu Menglong and agency staff. It was an example of digital forensics carried out not by professionals, but by devoted onlookers who refused to let this moment fade. Two factions emerged almost instantly. One insisted that Fan Shiqi had revealed the truth under uncontrollable pressure. According to this group, the tremor in his hands, the dart of his eyes, and the sudden collapse of his composure were all evidence of a person who had lived too long in fear. The second faction argued that he had been manipulated or misunderstood, that the stress of live broadcasting had led him to speak confusingly. Both sides fueled the fire, creating an environment where speculation spread faster than clarity. The turning point came with the unexpected appearance of a security log fragment. It showed a timestamp of Yu Menglong's manager entering the very building where the actor was last seen, at a time he had publicly denied ever being present. This was more than suspicious. It contradicted an official narrative. The revelation shattered any lingering belief that the situation was simply a misunderstanding. It marked the moment the internet's gaze turned away from Fan Shiqi and fixed itself firmly on the manager. Then the manager vanished. No statements. No refutations. His phone went dark. His social media disappeared. His office was found cleared out the next morning. The timing was too precise to dismiss as coincidence. To the public, it served as confirmation rather than explanation. Silence can be more incriminating than speech, and his silence resonated like an admission. The atmosphere thickened when a 14-second audio clip surfaced. The voice was older, authoritative, and simmering with restrained anger. Only one line rose above the distortion. "Do not walk out of this contract. You belong here." The implication was chilling. The tone was not advisory. It was coercive. Users across multiple platforms compared the voice with old interviews, behind-the-scenes recordings, and press interactions. The resemblance to the manager was disturbingly close. Yet the most unsettling moment occurred only minutes later. The clip disappeared. Not because the uploader removed it, but because the platform did. The official reason cited privacy violation. The unofficial interpretation was far more sinister. The removal appeared too fast, too targeted, as though someone with influence had intervened. If the live stream had opened the door to suspicion, the disappearance of the audio swung it wide. Meanwhile, attention turned back to Fan Shiqi, whose silence had become increasingly alarming. Reports spread that representatives from the agency had visited him. Rumors claimed he had turned off his phone, stopped leaving his apartment, or was being monitored. The possibility that he was in danger only intensified public urgency. If he was afraid to speak, then whatever he knew carried real weight. The chaos reached a new peak when a shaky, grainy video, filmed from behind a tinted car window, appeared online. It showed Fan Shiqi entering what was believed to be the former residence of the manager. His hood was pulled low. His posture was tense. He glanced behind himself repeatedly, as if expecting to be followed or stopped. The clip ended abruptly, leaving the world suspended in a cliff of speculation. News feeds updated every second. Threads expanded into encyclopedic timelines. Millions waited for the next fragment, the next clue, the next confirmation. The story had evolved from an accidental confession into a full-scale digital pursuit for answers. And as the online storm grew louder, one truth became undeniable. This was no longer a public relations issue. It was the unraveling of a narrative that had been tightly sealed, and the world was now watching every crack widen. For 3 days, Fan Shiqi's absence felt like an omen. His accounts went dark, his phone unanswered, his schedule abandoned without explanation. The world had watched him break under the pressure of a single question, and now that he had vanished, an unsettling possibility crept into the collective consciousness. Perhaps the same forces that consumed Yu Menglong were now circling him as well. The silence surrounding his disappearance did not feel voluntary. It felt enforced. During those days, speculation multiplied with the urgency of a countdown. Observers believed he had been confronted by the agency. Others believed he had been threatened, pressured, or warned to remain silent. Rumors spread that he had reached out to someone outside the industry seeking legal protection. Some users even claimed he had attempted to leave the country. Each rumor painted the same chilling picture: a man trying to outrun something he no longer understood how to face. The darkest hour did not occur in a dramatic broadcast or a public breakdown, but in the heavy stillness that followed. Fans feared the worst. Comment sections memorialized him preemptively. Threads documented every past appearance, every subtle sign of distress that viewers had missed. The internet waited, breath held, as if collectively bracing for an outcome no one wanted to confront. Then, on the 4th night, the storm shifted. A covertly filmed video surfaced from an anonymous account. The footage was grainy, recorded from behind a tinted car window, but the figure captured was unmistakable. It was Fan Shiqi, emerging from the shadows, moving with deliberate caution toward a narrow building in a quiet residential street. His hood was drawn low, and the tension in his posture was impossible to ignore. He walked as though every sound behind him could signal danger. For a moment, he stopped, turning sharply to glance over his shoulder, an action driven not by curiosity, but by pure instinct. The building was quickly identified as the former private residence of Yu Menglong's one-time manager. The same manager whose phone had gone dark, whose office had been emptied, and whose digital footprint had evaporated in a matter of hours. The same man whose voice was believed to be captured in the deleted 14-second audio file. The same man who should have been a guardian, not a threat. The implications were immediate and explosive. Why would Fan Shiqi go there alone, at night without protection, and without informing anyone? Was he confronting the manager, seeking answers, negotiating? Or was he delivering something, evidence perhaps, or a warning? The video cut off just as he disappeared into the entryway, leaving the world suspended between dread and anticipation. Meanwhile, fragment after fragment of testimony resurfaced. Former staff members spoke of the manager's temper. Others described an atmosphere of intimidation within the agency. A few recalled how Yu Menglong had recently hinted at wanting to terminate his contract, and how tension had risen sharply in the days before the dim room recording. The possibility that he had confronted the manager about financial irregularities gained traction. The idea that he had intended to expose internal abuses became impossible to ignore. The conclusion forming in the public mind was not based on speculation alone, but on a mounting collection of traces pointing toward the same shadowed figure. In this context, Fan Shiqi's confession gained new meaning. It was never supposed to go that far. He did not mean to. The words now carried the weight of a potential altercation that escalated beyond control. They suggested that the tragedy may have been the result of a confrontation turned violent, not an accident. The darkness surrounding Yu Menglong's final recorded moments suddenly aligned with the behavior of the man believed to have been present that night. The breakthrough was not a single revelation, but an accumulation of them. Yu Menglong's desire to leave the agency, the controlling behavior of the manager, the unresolved confrontation, the dim room recording, the sudden disappearance of key individuals, and the fear in Fan Shiqi's eyes all combined into a narrative too coherent to dismiss. This was no longer a puzzle made of scattered pieces. It was a portrait emerging from the shadows, each detail sharpening with every new discovery. And the world understood, perhaps for the first time, that the truth behind Yu Menglong's tragedy may have always been rooted not in an unfortunate accident, but in a betrayal carried out behind closed doors. As the digital world held its breath, one question rose above all others, setting the stage for the final reckoning. If these pieces truly point to one man, then what happens when the truth becomes impossible to contain? In the days that followed the emergence of the covert video, the story surrounding Yu Menglong and Fan Shiqi evolved from a fragmented digital mystery into a collective pursuit for truth. The silence of those involved had once shielded the event in ambiguity, but silence was no longer sustainable. Every hour brought new discussions, new analyses, and new interpretations from observers driven not by idle curiosity, but by an increasing sense of responsibility to understand what had truly occurred behind the closed doors of an industry built on image, influence, and unspoken rules. The aftermath unfolded with a weight that could not be ignored. Fan Shiqi's whereabouts remained uncertain, though faint traces of his movements appeared sporadically across unverified sightings. Each glimpse fed a mixture of hope and fear among those who believed he held the final missing pieces. Meanwhile, speculation surrounding the manager deepened. His disappearance created a vacuum that only intensified suspicion, and his absence spoke louder than any testimony he could have offered. Individuals who had once worked quietly in the background of the entertainment structure now found themselves implicated in conversations far larger than any of them had anticipated. Through every development, the public sentiment surrounding Yu Menglong shifted from grief to determination. What had once been framed as an unfortunate incident now appeared entangled with conflict, control, and desperation. The leaked recordings, the contradictory timelines, the concealed temper of a trusted figure, and the final known moments of Yu Menglong's emotional distress formed a narrative that no longer fit the definition of coincidence. And as each fragment aligned with the next, the question was no longer whether something had gone wrong, but rather how deeply the consequences had run. From this unfolding tragedy, several lessons rose with clarity. The first was the fragile nature of trust within systems built on power imbalances. When a figure meant to safeguard an artist's career becomes a source of fear, the foundation itself cracks. The second was the inevitability of truth when confronted by collective scrutiny. While individuals can hide, reshape, or deny, digital memory does not fade, and millions of determined observers form a force more persistent than any institutional effort to contain a narrative. Finally, the story revealed the immense loneliness that fame can conceal. Beneath the polished appearances lay a network of pressures that few outside the industry ever see, pressures that can destroy even the strongest spirits when ignored or misused. Yet despite the revelations, one reality remained. The final chapter had not been written. The world waited not only for justice, but for clarity. If Fan Shiqi chose to speak again, his words could redefine everything known about the event. If he remained silent, the mystery risked becoming another unresolved fracture in the historical memory of the entertainment world. And somewhere, the manager's absence lingered like a shadow cast over every unanswered question. As the digital community continues to gather evidence, demand transparency, and piece together the final moments of a story that refuses to disappear, one truth stands firm. The pursuit of answers has become a global effort, and the voices calling for resolution will not be easily silenced. For now, the world remains watchful, waiting for the next revelation that may finally illuminate what happened on that night. Until then, stay observant, stay engaged, and continue to question what lies beneath the surface. The truth, once set in motion, has a way of finding its way forward.